But voting continues at the Eagle Square venue of the 2021 National Convention of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, to elect principal officers of the party. Voting ends after 7 hours, and the ballots are sorted and counted.
83, 84.
The chairman of the PDP Convention Organizing Committee then announces the results.
Very importantly and very significant is for me to have the privilege as the chief returning officer of the 2021 PDP convention election to announce and declare His Excellency Senator Dr. Ayocha Ayo as duly elected and returned as the national chairman of our great party.
Declared 28 candidates to contest for the 21 vacancies, and 19 candidates emerged as consensus candidates. Of the 3 offices where consensus were not reached, Mr. Mohammed Suleiman defeated Usman El-Kudan to emerge as the national youth leader. Mr. Umar Damagun also defeated in Nachiroma to emerge as Deputy National Chairman North, while Ambassador Taufik Arakbaja defeated Prince Olagunsoye Oyinlola to emerge as the party's Deputy National Chairman South. The PDP lost power at the central government in 2015, and the new leadership is optimistic that the successful conduct of the convention puts the party on a path to victory in 2023.
PDP is back. And is back to rescue Nigeria from the terrible mess we have been in the last 6 years. Those Nigerians who have lost hope should today know that Nigeria is not a divided country. PDP will come back, unite our people, put them together, north and south, east and west. We will move ahead to develop this country. We did it before, we are going to do it again.
This convention is hereby adjourned sine die.
As it is, all 21 vacancies in the PDP National Working Committee have been filled, but the newly elected executive officers would have to wait till the end of the year, when the tenure of the incumbent NWC is expected to end.
Time to hear from some participants of that convention, and for that we head to Abuja. Markwe.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Looks like I'm jumping right into it. Right now in the studio we have with us Honorable Debo Ologunagba, who is the incoming National Publicity Secretary of the People's Democratic Party. Also with him is Mr. Osita Chidoka, who is a chieftain of the People's Democratic Party. Yeah, he says he doesn't want to be addressed as former anything. He has a lot of formers, if you want, but he's happy to just be addressed as the chieftain of the PDP. So interesting convention you hosted on Saturday and entering into Sunday, pretty lively. And now the results are out. It looks like a consensus was the way that the PDP decided to go with a host of its vacancies. The question that continues to baffle me, and maybe this is personal, is why it is that for all the democratic, credentials that a lot of the parties like to parade, why does consensus continue to be the favored mode of picking candidates rather than actually going at it in elections at the convention? Let me ask you first.
Okay, thank you, Mokwe. Good morning. And I don't understand. Democracy is about people coming together and having consensus. So whether you go the electoral route, whether you go the route of agreeing beforehand, the point is it is a system that allows for people coming together and willingly choosing a mode to elect their leadership. So what PDP has done is in line with the finest tradition of democracy, where people willingly say, this is the mode we want to use. And we used it, and it worked out very well. Now, what many people fail to understand is that if you go around the world, political parties are usually very small. They're not usually as large as the people that vote for them in general elections. So the most important thing about a political party is the organization. It is the messaging. It is the promise of being able to run a government. So if you look at the UK Conservative Party, I'm not sure they have up to 300,000 members, but they pull almost millions of votes in every election. Now, that brings you to the fact that allowing the party to work.
Would you say that that method is favored because oftentimes people see elections as divisive?
Not quite. Elections are expensive. Elections are divisive sometimes, if you say so. But the most important part of it is the ability of the party members to come together and choose a preferred mode willingly. So nobody is forced to accept a consensus. And for me, it's the way of democracy.
Well, I'm not sure now. I know that a few positions eventually had to go to elections at the convention. I don't think yours was one of those. Was yours decided through consensus, or you had to slug it out at the polls?
Thank you, Malpe. And I think my starting point is to congratulate the PDP.
I also have congratulated you because it will not have been an easy battle, right? Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. First of all, I need to congratulate the PDP. When you talk about consensus, I think it's by nature, by God's creation, to have consensus. Within the family, you don't vote between your wife, the husband, and the children. So within you, you agree on the mode of operation. And for me, it actually speaks volume about the capacity of PDP to reconcile differences and ensure that there's harmony, where people look forward to a bigger picture of how to fix things without rancor. There are 21 positions program, and only 3 we need to contest. What that means is that in spite of all the various interests and considerations and grouping within the party, this is a party that is truly democratic, that has the ability to come together and subsume private intentions and aspirations within the bigger fold. And if you translate that into Nigeria, that's where you know PDP is the preferred choice.
Because you're the incoming publicity secretary. I shouldn't expect any less than marketing of your party from you. So, but let's get back to the meat of the matter, which is a review of what transpired at the convention. Now, with this convention done and dusted, there were plans to try and upset the apple cart just before the convention happened, but it didn't happen in the court. The convention went on as planned, which still shows that maybe perhaps 1 or 2 individuals are still not happy with the party. Some people were disqualified because they had taken the party to court. The party continues to insist that you must exhaust all mechanisms within the party before you are allowed to go to court. Is that right? Now, some people have also said that as a result of the candidates which we saw or whom we saw filling positions, it does look like the governors have now taken over clearly the machinery of the party. Is this something that you agree with, and is it good or bad?
Well, I don't know about good or bad, because the governors are members of PDP and the highest elected officers of PDP, as it were today. Now, the beauty of the presidential system of government, and that's how the challenge about opposition creates a problem. The beauty of the presidential system of government and the federal system of government is that parties have occupy offices in the subnational governments. So PDP is in government in 13 states. So when you talk about an opposition, we are the ruling party in 13 states in Nigeria. So what you're likely going to have is that the leadership of these 13 states coming together are representative of the elected officers of PDP together with the National Assembly members. So it is first and foremost important to clarify that point that the governors are members of PDP and its highest elected officers. Now, therefore, the burden of managing PDP, of managing the controversies that normally come with human interaction, of managing the tension, falls on the PDP governors. So as you go to every state to nominate people, and which is what I like about Nigeria's unique federalism, is the inbuilt mechanism for consensus building, for zoning, for sharing of offices to represent diverse interests in the country. There's no better group of people to go to than the governors. Now, will the governors control the party post the election? That's where the issue comes in. For me, the answer will be a no. That will not work.
Why do you say no?
Yes, because the governors, some of them are second-term governors. They will be looking for nominations to go to the Senate or to run for president or run for whatever they want to do. Some will be going for re-election. And the NWC are going to make sure that there's a level playing field for everybody contesting against the governors. So in as much as the governors are critical in managing the tension in PDP, the National Working Committee now represents all shades of opinion in the PDP, those in government, those out of government, those seeking for office, and those seeking for re-election. That means that a certain balancing act has to continue to happen to keep all interest groups accommodated in the party. If you make it only for the governors, then there are 23 states in Nigeria, thereabout, where we will be contending. We will have no governors. So if you talk about the House of Rep members, if they all desert the party, the governors alone cannot make up PDP. So what is going to happen is there's going to be this balancing act by the National Working Committee, and I'm sure that the National Public Secretary here and the chairman and all the members will be keen to provide that level playing field.
Let me take this conversation to my colleagues in Lagos now. I'm sure they're keen to come in on this particular conversation. Gentlemen.
Well, thank you, Mokwe. The first question I would want to throw would be to Mr. Chidoka concerning the issue that he just raised about management of the party. The concern had always been just who controls the machinery of a party. If the governors, the elected officials, have to take the lead in controlling the affairs of the party, there are those who argue that they will most certainly be distracted from the real duties for which they were employed by the Nigerian people, which is to govern. So how then do we strengthen the apparatus of the political party to ensure that it's able to control the officers that are elected on the platform to do the things that they promise to do for the Nigerian people from the party and not just as governors or elected officials?
This is a very important point you're making. And two things I will preface my response here with is, number one is this convention came in 1 year before elections, meaning that after the 2023 elections, this NWC will still be in office. So most of the governors who are second-term governors will not be governors when this NWC will do most of his work over the next 4 years. Now, some of the governors who are first-term governors will be going for re-election and will be possibly they will still be governors at the time we will have another convention. So this is to tell you that by the nature of the election of this NWC, they will outlive most of the governors. Now, the second part is the issue of and I hear you loud and clear, the strengthening of the party institutions to make sure that the party is ideologically in charge of PDP governance infrastructure. So I believe that the chairman, the new national chairman, your chair, comes in with a lot of capabilities. One, as a former Senate president, he has that capability of managing stakeholders to build consensus. Secondly, as a former minister, he has that executive capability to be able to make sure that not only are PDP managing internal tensions, but that PDP is able to set an agenda for his government. Now, I wrote this on my Facebook wall that after the electoral convention, we need to have a policy convention. PDP needs to outline what makes it different from APC. PDP needs to outline what makes a PDP state different from an APC state. And what makes PDP a different party is not just in the fact that we share the banner PDP, but in the outcomes we promise Nigeria, the inclusiveness that we promise Nigeria, the umbrella that we provide for Nigerians to gather together and manage our diversity. So I believe that this NWC will be able to press the reset button in setting the agenda. And secondly, build an infrastructure for party funding that wins the party away from its elected officers, because part of the challenge of parties in Nigeria has been the issue of funding, meaning that the contributions from elected officers, both at National Assembly and the state government, continues to be a major source of income. But I'm thinking that going forward, PDP will be able to create a mass fundraising machinery, a mass membership dues machinery, and also investments to be able to attract funding to help the party going forward. So I think that this NWC is coming at a very good time. It will just be ready to conduct the primaries in 2023 and then be able to go into a governance mode post the election in 2023.
Well, I was going to even speak a little bit about that funding component, because one was wondering how the party institution is going to be created, independent or without huge consideration to the governors who are major funders of the party. And if you're going to create that massive crowd base and crowdfunding, do you think it's going to be commensurate or even better than the funding structure that currently exists within the party?
It definitely has to be better, because the current funding structure is not sustainable, is not scalable, cannot scale. It has been the bane of political parties in Nigeria. Every time there has been a military coup in Nigeria, the issue of party funding has been an issue, whether it is Action Group and the MPC and NCNC, whether it is MPP, MPN, and UPN, whether it is now PDP and APC. Post-2015 election, the issue of party funding was an issue in all the inquiries that happened. So I believe that the time is here for parties to diversify their funding sources. Diversification of funding source makes it possible for the party to fund a strong bureaucracy, makes it party to fund a very competent technocratic regime in the party. Because the challenge of Nigeria today is that our political parties are not contributing to the economy of Nigeria, the employment opportunities that it represents, employing people at the state level, at the local government levels, and making sure that those staff are able to use current modern tools, analytics, to understand voters, to know where PDP has been winning, to know the issues from our local parties, to know what is the problem in every locality so we can tell our messaging, we can prepare our candidates for election. So being able to diversify the funding source will make it possible for PDP to employ competent staff. It will make it possible for PDP to sustain working with consultants and with also think tanks across the country to be able to understand the issues in every location, understand the pain points of Nigerians, and profile credible solutions to those pain points. The failure of the party to do this in the past has been the reason why people are all saying the two parties are the same, just electoral vehicles, one you can go in and out of each. But fundamentally, the two parties are different. What is required today is for the NWC today to set the agenda to begin that differentiation and to begin to encourage Nigerians and the parties to understand what PDP stands for and what outcomes Nigerians are expected to see from PDP. So building an inclusive, strong infrastructure for the party to be able to maintain talents that can help the party understand the rising, changing demographics in Nigeria, changing technology at INEC, and also the attitude of Nigerians to their news sources, to how they internalize news, to where they get their news information from, and how the PDP can use those infrastructure to deliver its mission to Nigerians will be of great importance. So diversifying the funding will be critical going forward.
It's interesting, Mr. Chidoka, that you've done all the job of Mr. Ologunagba for him, but it would sound like what. But let's listen to him all the same. I'm pretty sure he has a number of things to say as well. Mr. Ologunagba, so that same funding, question that my colleague raised. He who pays the piper dictates his tune, so to speak. Do you see that a challenge, or let me put it this way? How significant a challenge do you see that for the administration of the PDP machinery that you are a part of, among so many other challenges that may be confronting your government, so to speak, when you eventually start work? How significant a challenge is that? How easily do you see governors who supported, this convention and the government that they have put in place to govern the affairs of the PDP, how do you see them handing over power, handing over the machinery of the party to this new administration in the PDP when they have been in control, so to speak, over time?
Thank you very much. I think my brother had done so much in explaining to you in all details about the diversification that is necessary for PDP to remain relevant that it has always been. You recall that right now, the computerization of the membership drive is going on. What that even assists to do is to be able to target membership, and then the dues can be tracked. What that means is that we can expand our capacity to generate funding for the party. It is true that he who pays the piper dictates the tune. But the interesting thing and the good thing about the PDP is that it is very democratic, and it has all its relevant organs controlled by its constitution. Every organ of the party, well, at the National Assembly, at the state government level, they all have their contribution to make to the party. However, the focus of the party will be to diversify down to the grassroots where people contribute their dues. And because when you contribute to your dues to the party, you'll be interested in what party is doing. And then that controls your own participation. You'll be interested in how you are governed and how candidates emerge. What are the policies of the party? And for us in PDP, that would not be a challenge because of the independence with which this new executive will be coming in and the caliber of the leadership, people that have been tested both at the parliament level and as well as the executive level, they will be independent of the governors. And that has been shown from the level at which, even in states where we don't have governors, the capacity of members of those states to determine and decide on consensus can then tell you and show us exactly how this party will be run in terms of independence away from the imagined control of the governors of the party structure. So I believe, and we're determined with the leadership of Dr. Eosho Ayu, that the NWC will be independent and that it would follow the rules and the constitution of the party to ensure that the policies, the national development policies of the party will be disseminated down from top to bottom. And because the funding will be so diversified, there will be no fear or the challenge of a particular group of individual or group will control the party structure.
One wonders, this approach of top to bottom, isn't it meant to be bottom to top? You always say politics is local, but having heard you reference the term independence, when it comes to the candidacy and this new leadership, incoming leadership, you've referenced independence time and again. Perhaps it would be good to hear your personal experience in the build-up to you being nominated as consensus candidate and, of course, emerging as now the incoming National Publicity Secretary. Just how much did you have to depend on the blessing or blessings of governors in the build-up to this? At least a personal experience might help understand this better.
Like I referenced earlier, the consensus even within the family, is allowed and is actually natural. I come from a state, Ondo State, that is not controlled by the PDP. That means every member of the party, particularly at the Elders Council level, were involved in the negotiation and the consensus building arrangement that produced my candidature. To that extent, what it means is that consensus is inbuilt in the mechanism of the PDP. And that is allowed anywhere in the world. And in fact, it's part of democracy. In the various constitutions, it's one of the options to producing candidates, either by election, by consensus, and the party, because its capacity to manage its own internal conflicts and agree to put in personal.
Honorable, yes, Ondo State doesn't have a governor, but at least there's a governor in the Southwest. Yeah. Did you have to rely on his blessing and perhaps, by extension, other governors to emerge as a consensus candidate for the National Publicity Secretary? Your personal experience, yes or no?
There's no question about yes or no. Governor Seyi Makinde is the only governor in the Southwest. And by that convention, is the leader of the party in the Southwest. In all the discussion, of course, he will be informed as the leader of the party in the Southwest. The decision from Ondo State was an internal decision between Ondo State people and the leadership of the party in Ondo State. All he needs to know as the governor, that is the only governor in the Southwest, is to be informed. And it's a channel of communication to the leadership of the party. So my personal experience is that, yes, we got our own consensus agreement from Ondo State. And from Ondo State, of course, it was communicated through the leadership of the party, represented by Governor Seyi Makinde, and that is from bottom to top.
So in other words, he didn't play any role, because it's quite good to hear these stories so people can understand how these consensus candidates came up. You're saying he played no role whatsoever in you being decided or, chosen as a consensus candidate.
I think a clarification is necessary here. There's no way Governor Seyi Makinde will not have a role. His role is the role of the leader of the party in the Southwest. In Ondo State, we took decision, we considered all the issues, we look at the performances of all the candidates, we look at their contribution and loyalty to the party, and we recommended. And we said, this is our choice. And because he doesn't have control over us, and the governor don't even have those kind of control, they can only talk to people to say, what is your choice? And when we made that choice in Ondo State, all we did was to communicate that decision through the leadership of the party in the Southwest, through the system, into the leadership of the party at the national level. And that's how I emerged.
All right. Just give us a moment. We'll go to break, but we'll return and get more response from both of you gentlemen in a moment. Don't go away.
Well, you're welcome back, Honorable Ologunagba and Mr. Osita Chidoka. Still with us in our Abuja studio, and we're reviewing the PDP National Convention. Of course, we're looking forward as well, because, it's not so much about that event. It's also about governance, democracy within parties, and what they say, the dividends of democracy to Nigerians. But, Honorable Ologunagba, I don't want to take this for granted, so let me just ask you. A lot of Nigerians watched what played out over the weekend. With the PDP National Convention. Yes, Markwe has referenced the build-up to that, how it seemed uncertain, but of course the court decided and it went on. But looking at the consensus arrangement, almost a tongue twister now, we saw that only 3 positions were contested. That's the Deputy National Chairman, South-North, and then the National Youth Leader. And for a lot of people, they say, why get almost 4,000 delegates, close to 4,000, over 3,000 delegates, to come all the way to Abuja from different states just to essentially elect for those 3 positions when others were consensus anyway. They didn't have a choice. They just were meant to agree with that. So what was the thinking behind that? I know it's in the law, but some will say when we're talking about cutting the cost of governance and all that, having to transport that much people, do you think it's, I don't know, was it an efficient process for you?
Thank you very much. I believe that democracy is about bringing people together. Like I referenced earlier, consensus building is necessary. And consensus don't happen overnight. You have a conversation from process to process. There were people, candidates and aspirants that have indicated interest before the date of the convention. But consensus is an ongoing moving target, and you negotiate. And because of that process, it was important that every member of the party that are delegates should come together into a venue where those conversations can continue. So it is not out of place to have that arrangement. Secondly, it was a celebration of democracy for the PDP and for the whole world to see. What was crystal clear from this convention was the fact that PDP was able to showcase its capacity to manage various competing interests within its fold, and then come out with a bigger picture of people subsuming their internal and personal interests within the global and the common good of the party. And that's why you see the consensus was 17 or 18 out of the 21 positions available. So what it means is this. If you reflect that back to Nigeria, it means the PDP is better poised and positioned to manage the various fault lines within the Nigerian system. We have several tribes, languages, interest groups, and so many considerations. But when you find a party that could manage from 21 to just 3 contested positions, it means it has a capacity to be able to manage the various concerns within the Nigerian state. And then
they expect, one can only hope,
make sure that people are able to see.
Eventually, we'll be able to get to the point where, I mean, I wish we could have consensus on all the issues of Nigeria as easily as you have put it. Because one area in which I want us to have consensus like that is the number of unemployed youths and the poverty figures, if only we could have a consensus on that. But let me take this to Mr. Chidoka. Well, while speaking, you and Mr. Ologunagba had said that the party structure as it is, the governors have a significant role. And as he was speaking, you heard Mr. Ologunagba say that the governor of a state is the leader of the party. Now, I'm wondering how that will continue to play out in this next dispensation. Will the governors still remain the leaders of the party? Because the question that came to my mind as soon as he said that was, what happened to the zonal chairman? What happened to the state chairman of the party? Are they not leaders of the party as they ought to be? You referenced that earlier. I want to expatiate on that so that we know and we are clear. Who is the leader of the party? Is it the chairman of the party or the governor of the state?
So this question has continued to occur, and so it's been an issue in 1999, I remember correctly, after the convention in Jos, and then Obasanjo emerged the leader of the party. The governors emerged the leaders of the party in their various states. Because, again, the presidential system of government and our type of democracy is not a party democracy. It's not the parliamentarian style where the party is elected and not the individuals. So if you look at today in America, I'm not sure you know who is the chairman of the Democratic Convention, nor do you know the chairman of the Republican National Party. Once the president emerges, he becomes the face of the party. He becomes the leader of the party. So that means that the governor in a state is the leader of that party because he's the highest elected officer of the party. He becomes the face of the party. in a parliamentary democracy, then the issue becomes having the party majority, so you talk about the party more than you talk about the individuals. If you look at today, the midterm elections coming up in the US, everybody is calling it a referendum on the Biden era, the Biden regime. It's not a referendum on the Democratic Party. It's a referendum on Biden, because that's the nature of presidential system of government. So in reality, what we are doing in Nigeria, which is a copy of the presidential system, is that the governors become the leader of the party. The president becomes the leader of the party at the national level. Now, the party administration normally fades into the background after an election. What people want to see is the outcomes from the party. But because of this peculiar situation, we had thought about the reforms of the PDP in the past, and I've been part of that effort to reform PDP in the past, in 2005, in 2007, in 2013. Our conversations were around making the party to become policy institute, to be the repository of the policy capabilities of the government. So if we had been having those policy conventions, what you will see is that the party will be more like an umpire, making sure that its elected officers continue to deliver on the promises of the party, on the philosophy of the party, on the agenda of the party. So, which is the example we drew from the Christian Democratic Union in Germany. We drew that example from the ANC in South Africa. They normally hold their policy conventions where they hold the ministers accountable at the federal level, where they hold state governors, regional governments accountable to making sure that they are delivering on the core mandates of the party. So what will happen is that while the leader of the party is the governor in a state, but the ideologue of the party is supposed to be the state governor. So, like you said, forming consensus on issues of poverty, on issues of unemployment, youth unemployment in Nigeria, requires that the party in itself have the capabilities to look at the data coming out from the Bureau of Statistics, to look at the data coming out from the business community, and be able to continually craft a program for its members in governance. The more important members is also the National Assembly members. So I'm hoping that the new NWC will have quarterly meetings with the National Assembly members to identify the laws that are in process, PDP's position on those laws, and what the members should do to make sure that those laws that promote the core principles of PDP, which is efficient government, reduction in government deficit, we need to make those issues to be strong in 2023. APC has been very profligate in the way they borrow money, in the way they spend money. PDP should be consistent in proposing an alternative path. And that alternative path will require us to have the intellectual capacity to look at the current borrowing structure, look at where the money is going, and propose what will be an alternative for the PDP by National Assembly members.
Well, while you're working on the intellectual capacity of your party, there will be questions as to how big your umbrella is spreading, whether it's an umbrella for just the boys alone, whether it's an umbrella for just, people who are over a certain age. Because there'll be questions as to whether you've included the biggest demographic in this country as of today, which is young people. There'll be questions as to whether your umbrella accommodates people with disability, and there are questions around that. I mean, I watched my colleague, Seun Okinbaloye, yesterday on Politics Today, talk about that particular issue, and it would seem that the answers were not very convincing in terms of some of the things that you have criticized the opposition about the lead political party, the APC, for. You haven't quite reflected that in your own convention. Yes, consensus has worked for you largely, but the consensus has not included women. It hasn't included young people. How do you intend to convince this part of the populace that indeed you mean well for them? Let me start with you, sir.
Thank you. I mean, that might be the wrong conception about what happened at the convention. For the first time in the history of democracy and national convention in this country, the youngest youth leader emerged from contested election, which means this is a party for that demography that you're referencing. A 25-year-old man who speaks the language of that generation.
Just one person.
That, again, and that's fundamental because you reference that as a major demography, and indeed it's so.
Because some people will say that's tokenism. It was just the person for that particular position. Yes, indeed, it's an improvement from where you were coming from,
Correct.
where 60-year-olds
Yes.
have occupied that position.
Yes.
However, that was the only person who's around that particular demographic. Do you have anybody else who's below the age of 40 who's occupying any other important position within the PDP?
In PDP, for us, what is important is capacity and to be sensitive to those considerations you just mentioned. We believe that the demography of young people, I don't have the statistics right here, but we know that today they are the real people that controls how our democracy flows. If we get, like we have just done, a young person who can connect with the younger people and to the elderly, then of course we're bridging a gap. I use the word tokenism. I would disagree with that because that is massive. The ruling party today, we don't want to talk about that with regards to who is a youth leader, but we know that in PDP because this is a party that has reformed itself and is still reforming itself, getting conscious of what the consideration and the heartbeat of Nigerians are. We are conscious and we are responding to that with this convention. And that is clear. The women leader.
I do not know how clear that is. Let me come to Mr. Chidoka because I know that you're passionate about issues that has to do with young people. And whenever it is you see an appointment made for a young person, be it within your party or outside your party, you always have something important to say, at least to the young person. So I do not know if you can candidly say that you were pleased with the results, the outcomes of the, of what transpired at the convention, especially with regards to the emergence of young people at the convention?
So I cannot say I'm pleased. I cannot say I am happy that we are not giving opportunities to young people as much as we can. But that's not a problem of a deliberate effort to exclude. It is the problem of atomization. So as every zone was taking their decision, nobody had an overarching view of who was coming from each zone. So which is what happens now that we have an elected NWC. My take is that the issue is not about the elected officers of the party. There's more to it than the elected officers. I'm hoping that new committees will come up. I'm hoping that the party will form policy agenda issues. They will have specific thematic areas. I want to see young people chairing conversations about technology. How can PDP government support technology companies? What percentage of our budget should we make available for innovation hubs to support new young businesses? Because, you can see that despite the challenges in Nigeria, the international community are investing in Nigerian tech companies, showing you that people are saying, despite these challenges, Nigeria is still a viable market for technology. So I'm hoping that the Dr. Yochia, you led NWC, will not stop at just being elected. I'm expecting that we are going to have a women conversation. We're going to have a committee that will look into the specific issues about women. I want to see a committee on unemployment. So I want us to see us re-engage those demographics in Nigeria. And that, for me, is more important than even the elected officers. Because sometimes people get elected and they are not able to even discharge on those mandates. But I want to end by making this point. Being youth-friendly and being trusted by young people is not usually a function of age. If you look at the last year's election, the person with the youngest attraction from young people was Bernie Sanders, who is almost in his 70s. But the young people could relate with him because he speaks the language of the young people. So what is important is for PDP to shed its toga of a middle-aged party and adapt some of the vibes that the young people can relate to. We need to re-engage our music industry, our movie industry. We need to particularly pay attention to the gender issues and to the climate issues, to environmental issues that are hot-button issues, but also attract a certain demographics. So I don't think that the issue is the election of those age of officers. But I think the issue is about how PDP frames its narrative to Nigerians.
Well, I like how you try to make it seem like as if it's not an issue. I mean, but it's a good thing to be able to set an agenda going forward for your NWC. And I think that you already have your work cut out for you come December when you eventually take office. But how do you think that you're going to be managing, excuse me, I know that consensus happened largely, but I did say that there are people who will still be unhappy within the party. How are you going to be able to manage that interest? Are you already working? Have you had your, I don't know whether your first meeting, however informal, to talk about how you're going to be managing these interests moving forward?
I believe that the PDP, like I keep emphasizing because that is important, has its own mechanism within which it manages its conflicts. And that likely resulted in the consensus that you've been mentioning all along. As we speak, there are conversations going on at different levels of the party. Don't forget that we have not been inaugurated. There's a current NWC in the party, and they're midwifing this system to ensure that those areas of fault lines are being raised or smoothed out, and likely that is an ongoing process, and it's working. Secondly, the party is conscious of the fact that some people will be upset or disappointed with the outcome. And because it has a mechanism within its system that allows you to allow people to come in and raise their grievances and get it settled, that is equally ongoing. So I reckon, because of the experience and the expertise within this PDP to reconcile itself, I know that we would get through that. And because PDP is back, it's the hope of the nation right now. More people are coming in, and the people that are there are remaining there because that is where the future of this country lies, with respect to the issues that are confronting this country, from insecurity to unemployment and all that has been referenced earlier.
It's a fine place to leave it, gentlemen. I have to thank you both for coming on Sunrise Today this morning. Mr. Debo Ologunagba is the incoming National Publicity Secretary of the People's Democratic Party, freshly minted from this convention which happened over the weekend. And we've also had with us Osita Chidoka, who is a PDP chieftain. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Today this morning.
Thank you very much.
Sunrise Today will continue in a bit. Please stay with us.